One of the most common questions that I get from homeowners on Smith Lake is simple. How long does it actually take to sell a lake home right now? Some sellers assume that homes are flying off the market in a few days, and others worry that the market has slowed and listings are sitting for a year or more. And the truth is, neither extremes tell the real story. On Smith Lake, the timeline to sell can vary depending on price range, location on the lake, property conditions, and how the home is positioned in the market. In this video, I'm going to walk you through what the actual MLS data shows right now, how long waterfront homes are really taking to sell, and why some properties sometimes move quickly while others take months. One thing I've noticed talking with homeowners on Smith Lake is that there are usually two very different assumptions about how fast lake homes sell. Some people believe that if you list a property on the lake, it's going to sell almost immediately. And occasionally that does happen. A well-priced home with great water, a good dock, and strong presentation can absolutely attract attention very quickly. But on the other side, I also hear sellers say they think the market has slowed way down and that homes are just sitting for months without any interest. The reality is the truth sits somewhere in the middle. Some homes on Smith Lake do sell within the first few weeks. Others can take several months before the right buyers come along. That doesn't mean something is wrong with a property or the market. It usually just comes down to a few very specific factors. Pricing strategy, the condition of the home, the type of water access, and how the property is positioned when it first hits the market. Understanding those factors is really the key to setting realistic expectations for sellers. So let's look at what the real numbers show. When we look at Smith Lake waterfront homes sales between March 2025 and March 2026, the data gives us a really helpful snapshot of how this market is behaving. During that time, 222 waterfront homes sold, and there are currently about 146 active listings on the market. That already tells us something very important. There's still strong activity happening on Smith Lake, but buyers also have options. Now, here's the number that most sellers want to know. The median time it took for a waterfront home to sell during that period was about 92 days. In other words, if you lined up every home that sold from fastest to slowest, the one in the middle took just over 3 months to go under contract. But there's another number worth looking at too. The average days on market was about 129 days. And this is where things get interesting. The reason the average is higher is because some properties take significantly longer to sell. A few homes may sit on the market for months, sometimes because of pricing, location, or property-specific challenges. Those longer timelines pull the average up. And that's why real estate professionals usually pay closer attention to that median number because it gives a more realistic picture of what most sellers experience. But even within those numbers, there's a wide range. Some homes sell in the first few weeks, others may take several months before the right buyer comes along. And that difference usually comes down to a handful of very specific factors. Things like pricing strategy, the quality of the water frontage, the condition of the home, and how the property is presented to buyers. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, some homes on Smith Lake sell very quickly. In certain situations, we'll see strong activity within the first few weeks, and sometimes even the first few days. Usually when that happens, the property checks several important boxes. First is pricing. Homes that are positioned correctly right out of the gate tend to attract the most attention early on. Second is the property itself. Things like strong water, a good dock, reasonable access to the lake, and interiors that feel updated and move-in ready. And the third piece is presentation and marketing. Professional photography, video, drone work, and strong online exposure all play a big role in getting a property in front of the right buyers quickly. I actually saw a great example of this recently with a seller client. They owned a lake home that they weren't using very often anymore and wanted to take advantage of the equity that they had built. When we first met, they told me their goal wasn't to test the market or see what might happen. They wanted a clean, efficient sale. So we walked through the house together and talked about a few repairs and updates that would make a real difference to buyers. Once those were completed, we priced the home aggressively based on the current market value, not based on what someone heard their neighbor might have gotten. We launched this listing at the beginning of March, which is right as buyer activity on Smith Lake starts picking up. The home went under contract in just 2 days and is actually scheduled to close within the first 30 days. And that situation really highlights something important about the lake market. When the pricing is aligned with current data, the property is prepared well for buyers, and the marketing reaches the right audience, homes can generate strong activity very quickly. Those early weeks on the market are often when a property receives the most attention, which is why getting everything right from the start makes such a big difference. On the flip side, there are also properties on Smith Lake that take longer to sell. In some cases, that timeline can stretch into 4, 5, or even 6 months before the right buyer comes along. And in most situations, there are very clear reasons why that happens. The first and most common factor is pricing. When the property enters the market priced well above where buyers see the value, it tends to sit longer while buyers continue comparing other options around the lake. Another factor can be the physical characteristics of the property itself. On Smith Lake, buyers pay very close attention to things like the walk to the water, the steepness of the lot, and how accessible the dock is from the home. If a property has a steeper walk or more challenging access, the buyer pool naturally becomes a little bit smaller. Interior conditions can also influence how quickly a home sells. Properties that feel dated, need significant updates, or show signs of deferred maintenance may take longer because buyers start mentally adding up renovation costs. Layout can play a role too. Some lake homes were built years ago with floor plans that don't match what today's buyers are typically looking for. None of those things mean a property won't sell. Homes on Smith Lake absolutely do sell. But when one or several of these factors are present, it can extend the timeline compared to properties that are priced and positioned more competitively from the start. Another factor that affects how quickly homes sell on Smith Lake is the way lake buyers actually shop for property. Lake buyers tend to behave very differently compared to buyers in typical neighborhood markets. If someone is buying a house in a subdivision in Birmingham or Huntsville, they might look at a few homes during the week, make a decision quickly, and go under contract within a matter of days. Lake buyers usually move at a very different pace. A large percentage of buyers on Smith Lake are coming from out of state or from cities like Birmingham and Huntsville. Because of that, they're not always able to see properties immediately when they hit the market. Instead, many of them plan trips to the lake and spend entire weekends touring multiple properties at once. They may visit 5, 6, or even 10 homes during a single trip so they can compare different areas of the lake, water depth, views, and accessibility. Another reason the timeline can be a little slower is the type of buyers we typically see in the lake market. Many Smith Lake buyers are retirees or people purchasing a second home. Unlike traditional residential buyers who may be moving because of a new job, a growing family, or a school change, lake buyers usually don't have that same level of urgency. They're taking their time to find the right property. Because of that, even when a property is priced well and presented correctly, it's normal for buyers to take a little longer or move through their decision process compared to a traditional residential market. Another factor that influences how quickly homes sell on Smith Lake is seasonality. Like most lake markets, buyer activity tends to follow a pretty predictable rhythm throughout the year. When we look at the actual sales data, about 77 waterfront homes sold between March and June of 2025, which represents roughly 35% of all Smith Lake waterfront sales for the year. That means over a third of annual sales happen during just those 4 months. As spring arrives, buyers start thinking about summer weekends, boating, and spending time on the water with family and friends. That naturally brings more people into the market. More buyers touring the lake usually means more showings and more activity for sellers. That said, homes absolutely still sell outside of the spring and early summer months. Fall and winter tend to have fewer buyers actively touring properties, but the buyers who are looking during those months are often very serious about making a purchase. Another factor that can influence how quickly a home sells on Smith Lake is the price range of the property. For homes under $500,000, the median time to sell is around 71 days. These properties tend to move a little faster because they attract a larger pool of buyers. In the $500,000 to $1 million range, the median days on market increased to about 101 days. Many homes in this price range aren't brand new construction, so buyers often spend time comparing properties and thinking about the changes that they may want to make after purchasing. If you're curious what homes in that range typically look like, I did another video breaking down what $800,000 gets you on Smith Lake. For homes priced above $1 million, the median time to sell is also around 101 days. This is also where we begin to see more new construction opportunities, often starting around the 1.2 million range, which can appeal to buyers looking for a more move-in ready lake home. At that same time, luxury properties just naturally appeal to a smaller group of buyers. And those buyers tend to take their time evaluating different options around the lake before making a decision. So as price increases, the buyer pool naturally becomes smaller, which can influence how long a property stays on the market. Out of everything we've talked about so far, there's one factor that has a bigger impact on how quickly a home sells on Smith Lake than anything else, and that's pricing. When I sit down with sellers, we often talk through something that I call a pricing matrix because it helps illustrate how buyers typically respond to different pricing strategies. If a home enters the market above market value, the most common buyer reaction is simply to wait and see. Showings tend to be low, offers are rare, and the biggest risk is that the property ends up chasing the market with price reductions later. If a home is priced right at market value, buyers usually recognize it as comparable to other properties they're seeing. That can lead to a moderate amount of showings and occasional offers. But when a home is priced aggressively or slightly below market value, something interesting tends to happen. Buyers often see it as strong value and feel a sense of urgency to act before someone else does. Another important thing to remember is that today's buyers are incredibly informed. Most of them are watching listings online and comparing properties long before they ever schedule a showing. So when a home launches with the right price, strong presentation, and good exposure, buyers recognize that value quickly. And that's why the first few weeks on the market are usually when a property receives the most attention. So if you're wondering how long it takes to sell a home on Smith Lake, the short answer is that it depends on several important factors. Looking at the data between March 2025 and March 2026, the median time for a waterfront home to sell was about 92 days. But that timeline can vary depending on pricing strategy, property condition, location on the lake, and the price range of the home. Lake buyers also tend to move at a different pace. Many are retirees and second home buyers who are comparing multiple properties and taking the time to find the one that fits how they want to enjoy the lake. The good news is that homes on Smith Lake absolutely do sell. And when a property is prepared well, marketed effectively, and priced strategically, sellers often see strong activity early in the listing period. If you're thinking about selling your home on Smith Lake and want to understand what your property might realistically do in today's market, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to walk through the data with you. And if you found this helpful, make sure that you like the video and subscribe for more updates on the Smith Lake real estate market.